Hello, welcome to Carousel. I'm your host tonight, Barry Kesselman, and we have a very special guest today. Last time, if you've been watching along with us, as we hope you have, you heard about superstars and satellites and what have you, and intellectual things. Well, today we're going to do what every man in America likes. We're going to talk about sports. And we're going to do it with a sportscaster who has been in the New York area doing a lot of broadcasting with local stations and an announcer for the New York Nets when no one listened to the Nets, but he'll tell us about that. So it's my real pleasure to introduce you to Bob Goldsholl.
Barry, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Bob, and welcome. We are looking forward to sports in America as through your eyes, which I understand is the non-statistical part.
Well, yeah. I mean, everybody knows about millionaires in various sports these days. Quote, not like I'm not sure it's the good old days or just those days. But everything has obviously changed. Players make fortunes.
I heard that.
For talking about baseball, pitchers back when were expected to go 9 innings or close. Now they're taught to go 1 inning and throw the ball 98 miles an hour, and they can make a lot of money doing the 1 inning. So just something basic like that. Something basic like back in the days when a hitter had 2 strikes, with some exceptions, they would choke up on the bat a little bit. You don't ever, I don't think, see anybody ever choking up anymore. The money's in the home runs, and what did they used to say? The singles hitters drive Chevrolets, the home run hitters drive Cadillacs. Well, there's an element of truth to that.
It could probably strain their muscles from the steroid.
Yeah.
But at any rate, talking about baseball, I think you got your start in baseball, and I think you accomplished something that's sort of hard to believe in this day and age in the college level. Could you tell me a bit about that?
Well, I went to NYU on a baseball scholarship, and we played in a league then, this before the Big East and everything else, called the Metropolitan League, or Conference. It was NYU, St. John's, Manhattan, Hofstra, City College, Brooklyn College, Wagner from Staten Island. Mm-hmm. And the thing that was so nice, Barry, was my senior year, we had a very good team, but so did St. John's. They were always good. Anyway, to make a long story short, we beat them out for the conference championship. And the conference championship meant an automatic bid to the NCAA regionals.
Nice.
So we were in. St. John's was in on the strength of their winning record. Penn State and Delaware.
My alma mater.
Which one? Penn State? Well, I hate to tell you, we beat Penn State. St. John's beat Delaware, and then we beat St. John's to be the District 2 rep for the College World Series. And no NYU team had ever been out there before in Omaha, and it was terrific. You know, we lost to Arizona and then Wyoming the next day, but it was a great experience. And then I went with the Giants. This is before the draft.
Yes.
You signed with whatever team was interested in you and who you would like to be with. So I lasted 2 years in the minors. I like to say that I fooled them for 2 years, and then into the real world. So that was the end of that.
And you were a pitcher?
Yes.
Big fastball?
Not big time, but okay.
Okay.
Pretty good hook.
Well, that would be a hook for the rest of our conversation.
Okay.
So after you hooked through the Giants organization, where did you land yourself?
Well, the 1 year with the Giants was out in Hastings, Nebraska. And then I wound up in what they then called an outlaw league, which wasn't affiliated with any team, but they paid well. And this was in Brantford, Ontario. So I spent my second and final year pitching up in Canada.
So you're an international star.
International.
But then you moved off somewhere along the line to basketball or broadcasting or announcing. I'm not sure which, but I'd really like to hear. I mean, you're the professional here. I'm just sort of tagging along with you.
I actually went to work for an ad agency, buying time, went to a rep as they called it then, selling time. And then about 7 or 8 years after I did all that, I decided to give broadcasting a try. And it started out slowly. The first thing I ever did was a radio report. I was working at WNEW at the time, AM, the old days.
Yes.
And I did some Davis Cup reports from North Carolina. And then I wound up doing the last 3 games of the 74 season, I think, with the Nets. The color commentator was famous baseball player Bob Gibson,
Oh, yeah.
but he had to go back to spring training.
Philadelphia person, right?
I think he's from the Midwest, I believe.
Well, there you go.
I know he went to Creighton
I
in
shouldn't
Omaha.
spout off when I don't know
It's
what
okay.
I'm talking about.
He had to miss the final 3 games. And I went over to Channel 11 on my own and asked him, look, I played in college. I promise I won't say bleep on the air. Let me do the last 3 games. And for some strange reason, he said, go ahead. And I did them.
And so you're an announcer with WPIX,
That was, yes, it was PIX carrying the games in.
Channel 11.
Yeah.
And then you moved off, or somewhere along the way, you moved off to one of the network affiliates that everyone's heard of.
Well, I was at PIX for 5 years doing weekend sports and weekday reporting. Then I went over to Channel 2, WCBS, doing the same thing, backing up Warner Wolf at the time, doing weekend anchoring and weekday reporting. And then I left there, and I went back to PIX. This comes under the heading of everybody out there, don't burn any bridges. You never know when they need you again. So I had a 10-year career at Channel 11 broken into 2 5-year segments.
Very nice.
That was a bit unusual.
Now, I understand you also played basketball?
I was on the team in college, but in all honesty, I spent more time on the bench than Judge Judy.
I hear that you were
So-
what they call a 30-30 player.
Ooh, you know that. That's right. We had to be either up by 30 or down by 30 for me to get in. But it led to a good baseball season, so we didn't care.
Oh, very good, very good. And tennis, which is where I met you on a tennis court.
Yeah, well, it was a good sport to take up later. And I think I was in my 30s when I started.
But
And
you did
as you
some,
know, it's a fun game, and you can play into your 90s.
Oh,
if we're
good.
fortunate enough to be around by then. But great game and everything. You know, it had all the running and conditioning that golf doesn't. So I was one of many guys who played basketball that took up tennis.
I want to get into that, but you brought me to something else about basketball and baseball and what have you. So we have here a basketball. About that
This is a
size, right?
basketball,
That's
huh?
a basketball. Yeah, I'm that good.
Okay.
That I could recognize that. So you had some basketball going for you, and then you moved off and went into some baseball.
Oh my God!
You know, huh? You recognize
Are you
that, right?
two-seam or four-seam?
Well, me, if I could get it on 3 hops to the catcher, I'd consider myself fortunate. Some tennis.
And some tennis. Take
and,
them all.
And then you
I'm
mentioned
not going to juggle
no,
stuff, you know.
And,
like-
and then you mentioned golf. Okay, now I've heard, and this is what I want to check on. I mean, you've certainly handled a lot of balls in your day, but I've heard that the smaller the ball, when you're playing a game, the smaller the ball in the game that you play, the smaller your brain power. And I was wondering if that's a correlation with Congress at all, because I think they do
They're
more
golfers?
more of this than that. But
I had never heard that before.
no, well, maybe it's wrong.
Interesting theory.
I've been wrong before anyway.
Right.
But in tennis, you also did some broadcasting in tennis, right?
Yes. I worked for ESPN in the early days. We did some collegiate tennis. And then I worked for World Championship Tennis, owned by Lamar Hunt, for 3 years. That was fun. That was going from town to town and broadcasting the tournament results. Not the results, the play-by-play. You know, funny thing too, Barry. I was doing the Nets games at the time when they had Julius Erving,
Whoa.
Dr. J, and I was doing a tennis tournament in Columbus, Ohio, the Buckeye Boys tournament, I think they still have it, but I'm not sure. But once the players found out that I did the Nets games, it was like mass, what's Dr. J like? Can he really jump like that? You know, boom. But guys in one sport, really, is a safe rule, can really commiserate with stars from other sports because they know how tough it is to be good in what they're doing, or they should know.
Now, some of the stars in various sports are sort of celebrities in their own minds. You told me a story once about a tennis incident that you were involved in on television.
Oh.
Could you relate that one?
Yeah, I guess you could title this one, How to Stop Ilya Nastasi, when he goes on one of his tirades. And tennis fans who have seen him over the years remember how he loves nothing better than to berate an official, and they go arguing on the court, and the official, gives it back to him, and he just eats it up. Anyway, the director of the tournament that we were in at the time was in Salisbury, Maryland, and the tournament director was Mike Davis, an ex-British Davis Cupper, who probably knows more about the inner workings of tennis than any human on earth. I mean, he really knows what's going on. So we're in the truck, he's looking at all the monitors, and he sees Nastasi carrying on and carrying on. I suddenly hear the door of the truck close. And what happened to Mike? Well, he's walking onto the court.
Yes.
And he doesn't say a word. He walks onto the court, pulls down the single sticks, walks up to the chair guy, and he says, Nastasi's disqualified. End of the match. For the rest of the tour that year, Nastasi was the model of great behavior. He wanted you to argue with him and, gesture and everything, just to disqualify him. And there's an element in that carries over to coaching, I think, in the NBA, for example, playing time. They can get their salaries cut. They're so big,
Yes.
What's the difference? But sit them. That's the answer. Nastasi was great after that. He's a hell of a player, as
Yes.
you know.
Yeah, well, they called him nasty, and
Yeah.
I think it was deserved.
He
But,
was a very charming guy, actually.
good to know. I'm amazed that someone from the television studio or truck.
Well, he was also the tournament director. So he's directing from the truck, and then he walks out, during the tirade.
They don't give me that much power here on this show to be able to do something like that.
Soon.
We're working on it, but that's very good. Now, you spent a good number of years, and I won't go into how many, but working as the announcer for the Nets. Now, I don't know if that was in the good old days of the Nets or the bad old days of the Nets.
Actually, it was both, because even in the bad old days, they had Rick Barry, who was one of the all-time greats.
Love
In
his
the
name.
good old days was Dr. J.
Yeah.
And then getting into the NBA, which was something else, because the NBA guys really didn't know how good some of the guys were in the ABA. And there was an exhibition, the first exhibition game between the Knicks and the Nets, which was more than just an exhibition game. How would these guys from the ABA do against the seasoned NBA veterans? Phil Jackson, who was a player then for the Knicks, told me after the game, he said he couldn't believe how good some of these guys were, and his only other wish was that, or his only wish, was that the NBA get that red, white, and blue ball, which had
Yes.
a great feel to it, and drop the old one. But they learned quickly, good is good, and the four teams of the NBA, of the ABA, did extremely well in the NBA.
It looks like the Nets are going to have a good year in their new
Boy,
home.
it sure does. Sometimes you can get too many all-stars, which means that 2 or 3 of them are not going to be all-stars the next year because they're going to have to defer in some way. But I think with Jason Kidd as coach, even if he makes some mistakes, it won't be like some other guy. It's Jason Kidd. He knows what he's doing. He made a mistake. So what? Players, wrong or right, like somebody who's been through the mill.
So you see good things for them.
Boy, they've got a bench that would be a starting team on some teams. I mean, they're really, and I don't think, you can have too many stars, I don't think that'll be a problem with them. These guys have been around long enough where a championship really is what they want. They've got enough money. They really do. So I can't imagine, there'll be a few slumps in there somewhere, but I can't imagine them losing 4 games in a row twice.
You're going to make a lot of watchers of this show very happy when they hear this.
Oh, is that right? We have some Nets fans?
Oh, yeah, we do.
Good.
We do. I don't know why, but that's a different story. Now, but tell me about some of the experiences you had as an announcer. So you're on television.
In the arena or in the studio?
Oh, both.
Okay. Well, the big thing, of course, with the arena is that you usually don't have those deadlines. That copy's got to be in by so-and-so, we can't get it up on the prompter in time, et cetera, et cetera. Most people like, if you have a choice, of doing the arena, because, you're calling what you're looking at, and there's not that much preparation, really, especially if you've been through a couple of rounds. In the studio, different ball game entirely, as you can imagine, where you have a deadline, and the big thing is, usually the sports goes in the last or next to last section of a newscast, or block, whatever they call it.
Right.
So if somebody's goofing and has run too long, or there's a mechanical problem, and they get down to the sports, and you've written 4 minutes worth of copy with tape, and they come and say, 2 minutes, that's all you got, 2 minutes. Well, I learned my lesson the hard way. If you're in the bottom section of a newscast and you're doing sports, you better put the tape up in the front of your section, because you may not get to, you in time, or they may start running the tape and you're out of time anyway. So little things like that. But I like studio better because I like the writing part.
Oh.
Some guys don't like that, and they prefer to do a game and have a meal afterwards and go home.
So when you're on the studio, as you said, you've got a few people there. You've got your newscaster, your weather person, et cetera, et cetera. When you're on camera, what's going on? Sort of backstage, off stage, next to you?
I'll tell you one funny story. This was at PIX, and the anchors were Bill Jorgensen and Pat Harper, who had been around, and she was terrific. Anyway, Jorgensen was a smoker. I was sitting closer to him than I am to you right now. So Bill had this deep basso, and now with the sports, here's Bob Goldsholl. And he had a cigarette. I'm telling you, he smoked the cigarette while I was in what they call a one-shot, the only one on camera. And he had some magical way.
I hope they're doing a one-shot of you now so that our audience can appreciate it.
He's smoking his cigarette while I'm doing the sports like this. He had some magical way, without waving his hand, where the smoke never passed this imaginary line. Never. To this day, I don't know how he did it. He just blew it out in a certain way. But that was an experience, sitting next to a guy smoking, and people out there never knew.
Did he do anything magical with the cigarette?
No, I don't think so.
Just
Kept it in the shelf underneath, But he was a pro of pros, I'll tell you that. And then in the arena,
yes,
some funny interviews. One night we had Red Auerbach, the Celtics coach, on,
yeah, the great
who was
Red
now
Auerbach.
starting to scout NBA, ABA games because they were going to merge. So I have him on one night, and the Indiana State Marching Band is performing on the gym floor at halftime.
Yes.
And when they got to that end of the floor, I would ask him a question, and he would answer the question. And then as the band came down to our end, we had to shut up. So it was just in red. And then a U-turn, back they went, next question. So we had some funny moments.
That's very good. One of the things that disturbs me in live broadcasts like that is the the background noise. I mean, I can't hear the commentators half the time.
Is that
And
right?
it would seem to me that you could change the miking so that you
Well,
get more of the benefit.
Some of the teams pipe in audience sound. Sometimes they just don't balance it right. But I do know some teams, and you can really tell if you're listening for it. We had a thing once that this was at Channel 2 where Tiger Woods was playing in a golf tournament, I think in Detroit at the time. Anyway, for what they call beauty shots, they show the grass and the flowers. They had these chirping birds. Really was pretty. Good sound. We got a letter from a guy who was what's the term for a bird specialist?
Not a horticulturist.
Whatever. A bird specialist. Something's wrong. That bird's indigenous to the Southwest. It would never be in Detroit. Sure enough, they were piping in, I think it was CBS, they answered. They were piping in bird sounds just to make it sound nicer.
Amazing.
Good old TV, huh?
Yeah, good old TV. Of course, things have changed so much. I noticed if you're listening to a Yankees game these days, in fact, you and I talked about that. What happens between pitches? It's gotten so bad. What is going on there? What do you think about that?
This is just one guy's opinion,
Yeah,
okay?
but you're the man here.
There's some theory, I don't know where it started, that people who are watching baseball on TV just got off a boat from a third world country, that they may know soccer, but they don't know baseball. And each pitch, each foul ball is explained. I mean, first of all, 3 guys in a booth, forget about it. They're going to talk. You look at some of the tape from the 56 World Series, Yankees-Dodgers, they shut up between pitches. Shut up. We don't need everything analyzed, I don't think. But I was listening to a Yankee game. This was the height of commercialism. This was about 3 years ago, and Hideki Matsui was playing for the Yankees, and he was injured this particular night, and I forget who was filling in for him. So Susan Waldman, who had to read the copy, says, this at-bat, they sponsor at-bats now, if Hideki Matsui were here tonight, his at-bat will be sponsored by Benihana of New York. I almost fell off my chair. 1, to do that, and 2, to have the commercial run when he wasn't even there. If he were here tonight, it'd be sponsored by I mean, every pitch, they give you the weather forecast. I find it very hard to take.
Oh, I can imagine.
Well, as I say, one guy's opinion. I know they have to pay the bills, but there's a limit, don't you think?
Oh, I definitely think that.
All right. I want you to go out on a limb here, Barry.
I do. Well, let me tell you what I really think. Okay, that way I can't get into much trouble, right? But
tennis has some good announcers.
yes.
I like most of the hockey announcers. But here's one for you,
Okay.
if I may bring it up. I have yet to meet a person, it's the God's honest truth, who watched Monday Night Football back in the Carousel, Gifford, Don Meredith days, because of the announcers. People will tune out because of the announcers. But when I say because of the announcers, I'm saying, in other words, they weren't going to watch the game that night, but because Carousel and Gifford,
Yes.
and I know presidents of ABC and CBS Sports swear it's true. I'm defending myself by saying I've never met anybody who's done that.
Okay. Who's watched it because of the announcers?
Because a lot of people tune out. I come close as a fan to watching a game because of the announcer. Close. There's a hockey announcer who I just think is the best in the business, named Doc Emmerich, who has respect for the English language. He's just brilliant with his description of a game and the anecdotes that he puts in there at the right time.
Do you have any anecdotes either from your playing days or your announcing days that?
Well, I can tell you one about my first year in Canada. Now, it was funny. The first year I mentioned earlier, I was in Hastings, Nebraska. That was an all-rookie league. with guys just out of college and a few high school phenoms. This was a league that had some ex-major leaguers in it on the way down,
Yes.
but not so far removed, a year or two from the big leagues. So I wore thick glasses in those days. And the first game I pitched, before I pitched, they were short on players that night. 2 guys were injured, and the first baseman was going to pitch the second game of a doubleheader. So the manager, I haven't played yet, comes up to me and says, go into right field for 1 inning, because we're going to rest our first baseman. I have never played any position but pitcher. They stick me in right field. It's dusk, when the lights, which weren't good to begin with, weren't good. And I got these thick lenses, and I can't play the outfield. Sure enough, first guy up. I know it's coming my way because I see everybody turning around. I give it this, and the ball drops 6 feet from me. The crowd is booing me before I've thrown a ball. But I didn't think it was so funny at the time, but as I look back, I wanted to yell out, judge me by how I pitched. This is not my position. But I didn't, and everything worked out okay.
Well, good. It got you to your next career
Yep.
out of baseball, which I guess was all right.
Which was good.
That was very nice.
I've had shoulder replacements since.
I thought you were going to tell me that you faked the catch. The lighting was so bad they thought you actually caught it.
God.
Well, good. It's good to know where you stand and where you're good
Well-
in whatever you do. And obviously, you've done enough to know that, both as a sports person and as a sportscaster.
And there are people watching who will disagree with announcing, and that's the way it should be. But we should, argue or debate or talk about stuff like that. People want to read about A-Rod anymore with, and then you turn the next page and this guy's thrown in jail, and now the kid from Texas, Johnny Manziel, Mr. Football, supposedly was getting paid to sign autographs, which is a no-no. I mean, a lot of the fun has gone out.
Well, I'm glad you said that because our fun is unfortunately gone for this evening, Bob. Thank you very much.
Good.
However, next week, we are going to be clowning around, and I mean that quite literally. So stay with us at Carousel. We're going from good sports talk to clowning around, and we're going to hop on that carousel and ride around to another good session. So thanks for watching. Bob, thank you very much for coming here. I wish I had any talent compared to yours.
Bless you.
So goodbye all, and
Thank
thanks
you.
again.
Thanks, Barry.